Hello and welcome to Mumming It, the podcast where we chat all things parenthood. I'm Harriet Shearsmith and I am indeed mumming it in my way with my 3 kids, but I want to know what that looks like for other parents. If you like the podcast, don't forget to check out my book, also called Mumming It, available in all good bookshops and online. Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is someone that I am really excited to speak to. She is a social media expert. She's worked for massive brands like TikTok. She's written for Grazia and she is a mum of 3 with number 4 pending. It is Ola Pelovangu from the Pello family on TikTok and Instagram. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to speak to you this morning. It is wet and rainy outside, but I think we're going to have some sunshine conversations and hopefully perk us up this morning.
I think you're down south, aren't you? But I'm in North Yorkshire. Obviously, we're still on this digital way of recording everything. And it keeps getting a bit sunny and you think, okay, we can go. And then whoop, the rain is insane. So very typical July in Britain.
And the fact now people are talking about Christmas in July, I'm like, wait, we haven't even had a summer yet. Like, can we hold up a minute?
No, I think we did have it. I think we had our customary 2 weeks.
Okay.
Are you a sun lover then? Is that, you like being outside and getting out?
Yeah, I think the sun just makes me more of a morning person. This morning, my daughter said to me, she goes, oh, why are you sad? And she's very much of a morning person. And I was like, I'm not sad. I'm just not a morning person, especially when it's raining. Like, it just makes you want to stay in bed.
It does. When the winter lockdown was on, everybody talked a lot about seasonal depression and that kind of thing. And I'd never even heard the term before. But honestly, I think there is something about seeing that sunshine and just feeling it on your skin and feeling the warmth. And it's like a big hug. And I think it's definitely a thing. I always feel much perkier and much happier when it's sunny.
100%, especially when you wake up to it and it's like coming through the blinds and stuff. It's a really nice feeling. You're like, today's going to be a good day. But when you see the rain, you're like, right, give it to me now.
You've got to kind of give yourself a bit more get up and go, extra shot of coffee and be like, yeah, no, it's going to be a good day. I'm going to make it a good day. So, well, thank you so much for coming on. I am honestly so excited to chat to you because I've followed you for quite a while on Instagram and I've discovered your TikTok, which is just hilarious. I love the way that you involve your whole family in it. Like, I use TikTok for a bit of escapism. I say I like scrolling, but I kind of get into like a deep scroll. And then that ad comes up from TikTok that says, have you been on here a bit too long? And I'm like, nope, leave me alone. So I love TikTok for that. But you don't often see as many people get the whole family involved. And your kids just seem to love it so much. So how do you feel about having your kids online? And also, how have you kind of nurtured this real joy as a family on TikTok?
I think that's a question we definitely get a lot. And what started it all off was lockdown. I mean, half the things we share now, we would do behind the camera before. That was us normally. But then this was way even before I worked at TikTok. So lockdown happened and like homeschooling. And we were looking for a bit of escapism. And it was like when it's all getting really stressful. And I was like, what is this TikTok thing about? And the kids love dancing. Music is a big thing in our house. Like we make a Sunday morning playlist every weekend. And I do it on a Saturday, and whether we're making waffles on a Sunday or something, there's always different songs on, whether it's Blink 182, just introducing them to like old classics and stuff and getting them like pumped for the weekend and making it exciting at home. But TikTok just gave us that sort of opportunity to do it together as a family. And then we started recording it and sharing it, and we really just enjoyed it. And I think that was the main thing. We didn't do it for the numbers. We did it because we really enjoyed it. And someone would be like, oh my gosh, have you seen this TikTok? We should try this one. And then Maya, my daughter, loves inventing dances. And then she would be like, right, we can do this and do that. And just seeing how excited they were to take part in it meant that it wasn't something that we felt forced to do, and it didn't feel like unnatural to what we would normally do. It just felt like a platform sharing what we were doing before. But to answer your second question about having the kids on social media, I think when you are on any social media platform, privacy concerns is a huge topic. And especially with children who have their whole future ahead of them. And once things are on the internet, they're out there forever. And it's like, you have to consider the sort of things you're setting them up for, especially because they become aware that they're on social media, there's an audience, there's followers and things. And I think we have that conversation quite openly, that we do it because we enjoy it. Like, if one person likes it, that's fine. If two people likes it, but we're not doing it because like we want to be famous. It might sound a little bit strange, like, because we're so thankful and grateful for the audience that we've built on TikTok and Instagram. But when you do something and it's something you're passionate about, because in the process we're making memories. These are videos that I can show them when they're like 18 that they probably don't want to do TikToks with us anymore. And so it's almost like the content you create should add to memories as opposed to creating an alternative lifestyle that you have at home. But there is the darker side where people will take your content or pictures of your children and share it. And something I wrote recently in Grazia was getting a message from one of our audience on Instagram. And it was like, oh, this baby looks like your son. And she lived in Brazil. And it was a big billboard in Brazil and advertising a baby lotion. And it was Dream. His picture had been lifted off of Instagram and put on a billboard, a baby lotion that I've never heard of or we don't endorse or anything like that. But in terms of covering yourself legally, you have to have like a lot of money to be able to cover yourself internationally. I mean, there are things you can do legally in the UK and stuff, and brands can be guilty of it as well because they just see it as like lifting something, especially if you've tagged them. So I think it's part and parcel. I don't think anyone is exempt and there's no sort of like full protection, but we do it because we see the bigger picture. It's purposeful, and we like almost like bring them up in the digital age to understand that when you share content, it should be something that brings you joy and brings other people joy, as opposed to something that you're doing for validation, which is really important.
You see, I love that because I got into social media and I got into blogging because I wanted to create a career around the kids. But when the kids started to get involved, it was very much whether or not they wanted to. And I've spoken before on my Instagram about why you maybe don't see my eldest as often, because he's 10 now. He's got to that point now where a few of his friends are getting social media. He's quite salty that he's not got his own social media, but he's got to that point now where he is feeling a bit more of his own identity and learning who he is, and he doesn't necessarily want to be involved, and that's cool. And we've always kind of reiterated to them, and I think TikTok and Reels have been a really great way of pushing that forward, of using social media to be yourself and to connect with other like-minded people and to have a bit of joy. And I saw in one of your articles that you wrote, I think you were talking about a digital diet, and it is very much like that. It's about enjoying, you know, having the bits that you enjoy and having that fun and that great time, and when it stops, coming away from it and doing other things that feed your mental health and that feed your happiness, really, isn't it? But I love your daughter. She cracks me up. I was watching your TikTok earlier and I think you'd done a sister act. You can see she's having the time of her life and that she loves it. And my Toby's quite similar in the way that he wants to be involved in that kind of thing and wants to do that sort of thing, and he enjoys it. He's not quite got the same level of showmanship that she does. She has me in stitches, and you can just see that she's having the best time. So I love that, and I love that it's done as a family and that it kind of replicates your at home behind the screen experience of just having joy together and just living your best lives, basically. How are your kids feeling about baby number 4? Because I was watching, I think you posted last night on Instagram some of your old TikToks. Dream, isn't it, your youngest? Yeah. I thought they were so much fun, and I loved that you were like, baby number 4 has got no idea what's coming. And I love that. And how are your kids feeling about having another addition to the show, really?
You know what, Maya is so excited, and she's even thought about different TikToks and stuff. Micah Remy, he's 3, my middle son, and he's really clued on now. He was like, when the baby comes, I'll hold him or her like this, and should we call the baby this and call the baby that? But Dream, I don't think he knows that he's up for like relegation from the youngest in the house, because third child is a thing. Like, he very much runs the house, and he'll let you know from his little like arms by his side, and he's like, and I'm like, from hands in the toilet, and like, he does things that I never experienced with Maya and Micah Remy, and I'm just like, you were sent to test me, weren't you? But yeah, I think they're all really, really excited. So Maya is really pushing for a baby sister, and I was like, you know what? I'm not sure. Like, we'll find out sweets and stuff. And when we were doing our vision boards together, because we do it together every New Year's Eve, we do like a family vision board party where we get pizza in, we just get loads of food in, and we just like do our vision boards. And we had the one from last year, and this year she put like a baby sister on there. She was like, I really want a baby sister. So when we told her we were pregnant, she was like, no, you're just tricking me. You're tricking me. You're not pregnant. And she was like, that means everything you put on your vision board does come true then. And she's really now like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do next year's one. I'm going to put Disneyland, everything. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to make it all happen.
I think that's absolutely wonderful. I've not heard of anybody doing like a family vision board, and I love that. And I love as well that she's now conned into the fact that she she thinks it's all going to come true. That's really made me smile. I think that's so lovely. With you saying about third child, that's really cracked me up, because Edith is my youngest. I have Ruben, Toby and Edith. When I first was pregnant with a girl, everybody was like, oh, wait for a girl. And I was thinking, rubbish, gender's not going to make any difference, they're all individuals. And I've put it down to third child because she's a girl. So to hear that you've said your third child as well rules the roost, because Edith her brother tried to take some chocolate off her the other day, and he is nearly double her height, and he's really broad, he's like his dad, and she's quite small and dainty, and she just swung for him and stamped her foot at him and was like, no, and that was it. And she's 6, so she's really got no kind of toddler excuse or anything for that level of violent reaction, although admittedly that's how I would react if someone tried to take my chocolate.
Definitely
100%. But she rules the roost, and she's got no qualms about telling anyone. But she's also started saying that she would love a baby sister or a baby brother. It's no from us, but it would be really interesting to see how she reacted. So I'm going to be watching to see exactly how Dream reacts when he is ousted from that baby position. There's an extra sort of level, isn't there? I don't even think it's mollycoddling. I think it's just you're the baby. So you kind of manage to wiggle a bit more of what you want, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And Maya is almost like she was the first one. So she's very much like self-confident, like self-aware and things, being the first one, and she's like a mum to those two. But Micah Remy, who's my middle son, because Maya, she has this energy about her. She speaks, obviously she's quite chatty, which I encourage. Like, she asks a lot of questions, and it's almost like he settled into second place, has almost been like, well, she can ask all the questions and I'll just follow, kind of thing. We weren't sure whether that was why he took a little while to speak, actually. He didn't start speaking until he was 3. We were really, really worried, and I think he was just taking it all in. I think when you have an elder sibling who is quite confident and speaks a lot, it's very much like you can sometimes just take a seat and like, she'll sort it out, kind of thing. And then now he's found his voice, he kind of like will challenge things and stuff, which we really, really encourage. But Dream, he just does not care for anything. He's just like, right, I want that bread and I'm going to take it because you've got it in your hand, and he'll just take it. And I'm just like, wow, okay.
Do you find as well that your older two kind of just let him? Like Ruben Edith, he's very much, as you said, the oldest child, kind of slips into the role of parenting them sometimes. And I'll say to him, look, you're not their dad, so you can't tell them what to do. They're not going to respond to that well. So back up a bit. And Toby, who is my middle child, he's also, like Micah Remy's, quite laid back, quite like, okay, just get on with it. And then he's got that fire when he really is angry, but he's kind of happy for them to do their thing, whereas both of them will give in to Edith really quickly, like without any questions at all.
Do you think that came from when like Edith and say Dream were younger and we were constantly like, oh no, let him have it, he's the baby? Like, so it's almost like they've been conditioned to be careful or to kind of just let the youngest have their way. And especially when they were really tiny, Dream sleeping, you can't make noise. So their life kind of changed a little bit with this new baby. So it's almost like conditioned them to feel like maybe, he's the one who needs all the care and attention and everything as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, actually, because I was always, I was on my own. Adam was working quite a lot of hours because he worked in hospitality. So I would be like, right, I'm going to go and put Edith to bed.
Yeah.
All be quiet. And like really actively encouraging them to change their behaviour around her. So I wonder if that's what it is. Maybe we've hit the nail on the head there. Maybe we've conditioned them.
There might be something around that, like when there's the arrival of the new baby, how you ask them to kind of respond to the baby, and it kind of just sits with them as they get older. And then that new baby, as he or she cottons on, becomes aware to the fact that you're forever saying, give it to your little brother, don't do that, do that. And then that's like, right, this is my turn. Like, and it gives them that sort of like little boost to be a little terror.
This makes complete sense. We've done it to ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
What it is, isn't it? So how are you feeling in pregnancy? I mean, it's a strange time to be pregnant, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to the journey again, because we're going to be having a home birth, and we had a home birth with Dream, and a few mums have always said that when you know it's your last, you kind of get the feeling, and I actually feel like this is it for me. This is it. I keep saying to Darcy, I was like, I don't think I can do this again. Like, my body can't take it anymore. But when we first got together, Darcy was like, maybe we should have 6. And I was like, yeah, I agreed back then. And with every single one, I've kind of been like, maybe we should stop now. But with number 4, we were definitely like, let's keep it close together, let them grow up together. And we're so thankful that we're able to go through this again with pregnancy and have baby number 4. But I'm feeling like more exhausted. Obviously, there's like a lot more to do with the children. Life's changed like a lot from each one of the pregnancies as well. So I think like when I compare it all, I was working full time at Global with Maya at Capital. And then with Mike and Remy, I was running my own business. And then with Dream, like the business, I did brand consultancy. So I didn't really have a maternity leave and stuff. So this one, I'm more excited because now that we're in that position where we do content creation full time as a family, I feel like the baby I'll be able to be around a lot more and be part of the journey, which was something that I felt a lot of guilt over, because either I was wanting to go back to work because you were scared for your role and you were like, people are going to think I'm not capable anymore, or you had a business that you couldn't really walk away from. And this is the first time that I think our lives will coincide with our work, and it won't feel like I'm having to have a conflict with working and having a baby at the same time.
It's so hard, isn't it? Because there's so many pressures around motherhood and working and your career, and so much mum guilt as well. And mum guilt is something that really fascinates me because it's something that I feel so deeply, so often. And yet I speak to my husband and he has the same worries and the same love and concerns for our children that I do, but he doesn't have the guilt. He wouldn't have felt guilty going to work, and he wouldn't have felt guilty going and enjoying something for himself. And I think mum guilt in particular, it's fascinating how it's so prevalent for so many people. It's one of the things that I really, really wanted with this career in particular, was to be able to, as you say, kind of slot myself around their childhood and make sure that I was always there and I was always present. And it's a huge privilege to be able to do it. But ditching that mum guilt is so hard.
Yeah, I definitely think it's hard. I mean, recently when we went away for a staycation, it was just me and Darcy. I think on the journey there, once you kind of hit exhaustion with like motherhood and stuff, I said to Dream when I saw him, I really missed you. And I got a DM and there was like, you didn't really miss him though, did you? And I thought about it and I was like, I didn't. I actually didn't miss him. But it's like, naturally we feel like we have to miss them. But it's okay to have enjoyed that time away and been like, actually, I didn't miss the chaos. I didn't miss the crying. I didn't miss being called mum from all 3 different directions and stuff like that. And I think I'm getting better at kind of understanding that you can be happy not being around your children, and you should be vocal about that as well, because it can be a lot. It can be so exhausting. But I think we feel that when we put that out there, people might be like, well, why are you a mother then if you don't enjoy it? But it's not that. You're just saying that you don't want to spend every living minute with them in your ear, and that's normal.
Gosh, that resonates with me so much. So pre-pandemic, Adam and I would take like little weekend breaks, really, very similar to what you guys did. And I think the longest one that we did was 4 days. We went to Rome, and Italy, somewhere I'd always wanted to go. So I was so excited about it, and I didn't miss them. I really didn't had the most wonderful time, and just reconnecting with my husband and with myself as well, and just spending that time as adults without the constant, as you say, it's mum, mum,
Yeah.
mum, mum, and they'll all talk at me at once, and it can be really overwhelming. And I spoke about the fact that as much as I adore them, I didn't miss them. We spoke to them beforehand and we kept in touch with my in-laws, but we weren't ringing every single night to speak to them. One, we thought it'll probably upset them. If they've had a bad day or something, they'll probably want us, and then we ring up and we're not there. And two, they weren't fussed. We were getting pictures of them doing all sorts of things with their grandparents, like living their best lives, like they didn't care. And I had a few people message me and be like, why didn't you ring? I couldn't not ring my child every night. That's awful. We don't just do it to ourselves, but we do it to other mothers as well.
Yeah, and this is it.
Knock that off.
100%. I think it's the people who have those opinions that are probably lying to themselves. I think they're trying to fit what that perfect motherhood should be like. And that's what causes anxiety. It's what causes depression, because you're showing the world that, oh, I love it. I love doing this. I love waking up and going to the football every Sunday in the cold and sitting there like in the snow and getting my hands frozen. I absolutely love it, like kind of thing. And there are days when you're like, do you know what? I could do with a lion this Sunday morning, and I wish I didn't have to do this. And what I found a lot recently is the bond from what we share on Instagram has come from when you share reality, when you share your kids in the garden eating soil. It happens all the time. And then the stories I had on the feed about kid was in the playground, picked up a cigarette butt, before I knew it, she chewed it and like half a snail and stuff. But it's stories that you're afraid to share in case you're labeled as a bad mother. And we need to stop it, because we know what's going on in our house, but I think it's because we kind of don't share it. We feel like we're better than other people, whereas we're all in the same boat. Like there are times when I'm just like, stop screaming my name. And you say that. And that happens a few times a week, I would say. Like, it real. We have to keep it real. Or they do things and then you're just like, why did you do that? I just don't understand. And because the parenting side isn't just the fluffy side, it's the side that challenges you and that's changed you. And then you have to become that. You can't always be their friend, because there's the boundaries. And that's something that I was talking to you earlier about, working mums on Netflix. I love watching relationships like with yourself as well. I love seeing how that will develop with older children and how I can possibly shape how I am as a parent as well. But I think looking on to seeing how other people are dealing with older children, with teens and stuff. And there's a different array of mums on social media that I just love how they're just like, I mean, Nicola, this girl, can organise.
Oh, yes. I don't know her, but I've heard of her account.
Yes, she shares like quite a bit on like the fact that like raising teens. And I'm interested in that stuff because the challenges we have now, we should remember ourselves as teens. If Maya is anything like I was as a teen, then I've got it all to come. And I know there were times where it'll be cuddles and I love you, you're the best mum in the world. There'll be times where she doesn't even want to sit next to me and you have to wonder, oh, what have I done? So I think we need to start building that mentality now, that if we're real about it, then we can share our actual issues that are happening at home with other parents that'll be like, do you know what, it's normal, she didn't speak to me for the whole week because I told her no screen time, or because I told her she had to do this. And I'm like, right, okay. And then you can then mold your parenting accordingly at home, because every child is unique. But it's nice to not pass judgment, but to observe and think, right, this is the sort of things that I've probably got to come.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's the old saying, isn't there, of it takes a village. And I think in this digital age, the wonderful thing is your village can be anywhere in the world, but you have it right there in your pocket, and it's a support network, and it's a learning tool, and it's a sharing of information. And when we keep that real, and when we keep it honest, and we are brave enough to say, I'm not liking this, or I found that really difficult, or this happened today and I feel really guilty about it, it allows other people to see that that happens to all of us. It happens to everyone. Going back to your point about not being their friend all the time, I was always raised with the mentality of, I'm not your friend, I'm your mum. And that is a totally different relationship to what you'll have with your friends. And it doesn't mean that you're not having fun. It doesn't mean that you're not, you know, enjoying time, and that you've not got that similar best best friend vibe going on at times, but there is always that separate role. And I think that's something that I'm trying to pass on to my children, that I can be there to support them, but I have those boundaries as well, where I'm their mum and I'm in charge, and that kind of I like to think I'm in charge.
I'm totally with you on that. And I think, yeah, we just need to know that it won't always, because now they need us. Like, it's almost like they need us, and we're like their support, their lifeline almost. But there'll be a time when that independence starts coming into place, which will challenge some of the things that we think, I think this probably won't work for you, or I don't want you to get hurt out of the fact we want to protect them. But a lot of us have to find out the hard way. You know what it's like when your parents are like, no, that's not good. You want to do it. It makes you want to do it more, doesn't it? So yeah, I think that makes me excited for motherhood, knowing that there'll be the challenges, but equally we're here. So we all survived it. And we're all building families of our own, and all of our experiences shaped us, whether it's like me saying to my parents I was in the library and then jumping on a coach to see a boy and going all the way to Canterbury, and then missing the last coach home, and then having to tell them that I got locked in the library. And then my dad went to speak to the caretaker, Mr. Stevens, and was like, right, are you not doing sweeps of the library before you've locked it? Ola said she got locked in the library last night, and he was like, he saw my face, he was like, I'm really, really sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have checked. And it was a thing that we never ever really spoke about, me and Mr. Stevens. And he just covered for me. And it's like, if you know the sort of things that you've done to kind of avoid like rules and the lies that you've told, you're like, oh gosh, what have I got to come?
If you have not done so already, send the man a bottle of whiskey or something to say thank you.
If I found him, I would thank him, give him all the gifts, because he saved me.
I love that.
Everything. And like, he was just like, I'm really sorry. He looked at me and it's almost like we connected. He knew I'd lied, of course. Like, he didn't lock me in the library. Like, he was like, but if your dad then takes it higher to the school and says I locked a pupil in the library, we're gonna have to come clean. And I was like,
what a legend that man is.
Yeah, definitely a legend. I wonder where he is now, actually. But we all have stories like that. But knowing that there is a stage as girls and boys go through different stages as well, where like you just want to rebel. You just want to rebel because you just like, well, they've tried to keep me under wraps and like under lock and key, and I'm just going to do my own thing. And then you're like, oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't. Like, I'm now stuck in Canterbury coach station with nowhere to sleep, nowhere to go.
But you got through it, right? So they must have done a good enough job to have prepared you for sitting there in that situation thinking, right, I'm now stuck in a bus station, but you're still here. So luckily.
I survived it. Oh gosh, I can't. That story. Do you know when stories just come to you and you're like, oh, the things we got up to?
See, that's one of the things I like about podcasting, because these stories just suddenly pop out there and you've totally forgotten about them. Like you've repressed them or you've forgotten or whatever, and they're just there all of a sudden, and it brings back some wonderful memories. I think I've reached that stage of motherhood now where I'm starting to become kind of the more like passive role at times, especially with Ruben. He's 10 now, and he turned to me the other day and was like, I want to go to the cinema. And I was thinking, okay, cool, we've not been to the cinema for a while. I want to go with my friend. And I said, oh, right, okay, I can take you both. And he was like, could you drop us off? And I was thinking, okay, right, so I'm now in that more passive role with him at times, where I'm there because I'd have to stay to make sure that they were okay. He's only 10. So I'd need to be there, but I'm not really there. And it's actually quite a hard pill to swallow. And like, they'll be doing things and entertaining themselves, and I'll be able to sit with a hot cup of coffee, which is a great perk of it. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, someone's going to shout me in a minute. You know, I must be ready. I must need to go. And it's getting to that stage now where I'm seeing moments where I'm becoming more of a passenger and letting them take a more active role in the things that they're doing. So even at this tweeny stage, he's starting, and I can see it, and it's only going to build, and it leaves you with some really big questions about what you're meant to do with your time and who you are now as a person. Because I remember before kids, I was a totally different person to who I am now. So we talk a lot about getting yourself back, but I'm not going to get that person back because that was 10 years ago. So now it's a case of looking and going, okay, well, who am I now? Who am I in this new role as a mum? And it constantly evolves in the same way that they do.
That need becomes less and less and less, like for them to kind of, they don't need us. and then you almost feel like in limbo. Like, I think that's one of the things as well from watching like mums with older children. I'm really interested in looking at how that role changes and how to adapt to it. And this is why, as much as we share our real conversations, I appreciate other content creators who share their real conversation, because I feel like I'm learning loads as well. I'm feeling a bit more prepped for like that journey ahead, which is why we have to keep it real on social, because you don't know how many people you're helping on the journey as well. So yeah, I'm interested to see that stage as well.
Yeah, it's that next kind of step in parenthood. So one of the things that, and this is actually how I discovered you on social media, was when you did an IGTV, just your chatty ones where you're talking about a topic and you're keeping it really real. And one of the ones that I first came across was where you were talking about mothering without your mother, be that via her passing away or be that via your own choice. And it really resonated with me at the time, because actually it was the first Mother's Day that I had been without my mum. And my mum hasn't passed away, but for various reasons, we have a really fractious relationship. And I've chosen to take a step back from that and protect myself, which within itself has come with some really big questions and is not, by society standards, certainly not really discussed and not really accepted very well. So it was just the way you were talking about it really spoke to me, and it was totally judgment free. How has your experience of mothering without a mother been?
Yeah, I mean, like, gosh, where do we start? And first of all, I just want to say, like, roles kind of flipped as well. Like, I understand how those fractious relationships and like toxic relationships can cause you to kind of almost forgive someone, but you don't want to, you can coexist but not want them, because I'm in that same position with my dad. And again, it's not something that's commonly spoken about on social media. You almost feel like guilt from people who have lost their parents, but you've chosen not to have your parent in your life based on that toxic environment. So I can totally relate from every bone in my body when it comes to like my dad and stuff like that as well. So but mothering without a mother, I think really helped me. You know, when the emotions are like coming to the surface, help me understand how to see what's the most important thing when it comes to motherhood. And I think it's made me who I am in terms of like understanding that your best is always enough, because I then sat there in the role of a daughter and felt like how I felt about my mum, but she was probably feeling the guilt, but I probably felt a lot of the times to want to protect us and not want to do anything to hurt us, because there was so much stuff that I found out after she passed away from an anonymous letter. Whoever wrote that, I don't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, that told me all the things that she'd had to deal with and that she'd kept from us, and all the horrible things that like, and she was a smiler. She was quite like me, and she was very much like you would never have known on a Sunday. She was always the last one to sit down at the dining table because she wanted to make sure everyone was okay, but she was dealing with a lot that she protected us from. And it made me realize that as women, we quite often ignore our own feelings and emotions and put them on the back burner out of protection for this family that we're building, that then in effect, like, it's really like killing us inside. And it made me feel really kind of aware of when I'm feeling certain things and I ignore it. So now I try and really address my feelings and be like, right, if this is happening, how do I let the children know from a way to make them more emotionally intelligent and keeping it real with them, as opposed to feeling like I have to wipe my tears in the bathroom and come downstairs and be this happy mum. And people always ask, like, if there was one thing you could ask her if she was still here. And I felt like the question I would always ask her is like, did she neglect her own sort of needs as a woman in exchange for her role as a mother? And that for me is really important. And this is why I think we should always think about how are we feeling as mums. When people say, how are you doing and stuff, it's not that whole, yeah, I'm fine. You know what, the kids are just, if it goes deeper than that, let it out. Because it's these emotions that you bottle up inside that can actually affect you, like health wise. Like stress can materialize in itself and how it kind of adapts the way your cells react to like certain illnesses in your immune system, because you're so broken down inside that your body is like can't cope with certain things. So speaking more is definitely something that, even with my relationship with Darcy, like making sure you're having those conversations when you're feeling it before it gets to a point where you've repressed it and it starts turning into trauma. And when events that you don't address and turn into trauma, they'll come out later on in life. So I think mothering without a mother for me has been like always remembering to acknowledge my needs and know that they're valid too. Like my feelings are valid too. And I don't have to come second to my children. But I am a mum, but I'm also a woman. I am also me. If I'm not okay mentally, it will tell in my mothering and stuff as well. I think back and look for signs. I wish I'd picked that up with mum. I wish I'd known. I wish I'd done this. I wish I'd done that. So I have check-ins with myself. Have you been completely honest with how you felt about all the situations that you've gone through this week? And have you been completely honest with your emotions around your family? Because if you can't be open and yourself around them, then who else? That you're forever going to be fooling the world. But it's been hard. Like when you want to talk about your first, oh, so-and-so's doing this, or Maya's lost another tooth, or she's into this now and stuff, you almost feel like, wow, like I can't really have that conversation. And what makes me cry the most, and I say to Darcy, is like, I don't have someone who brought me into this world anymore who can be like, have you eaten today? My mum was constantly like, have you done this? Have you done that? So when I see other people with their parents, with their mums, there is that sort of air of like, oh gosh, why have I not got that? I haven't got someone to come around and say, you're not feeling too well and stuff. Like I've got to be the mum all the time. There's no, like, you can't be ill.
There's no one bothering you, kind of, yeah.
So it's been hard. And I hope I haven't waffled, because it's a topic that sometimes you just think that, gosh, it's hard. But I definitely believe that nothing happens to us by accident. And one of the things I said when it happened to me, and Darcy was like, that's a strange thing to say, was like, I'm glad it happened to me as opposed to so-and-so, as opposed to so-and-so, because I felt like maybe I am the stronger person to be able to get through it. And I'm not strong all the time, but it's almost like it's so painful that you almost are happy it happened to you and not somebody else that you care about, or a close friend or a cousin, because you're like, okay, at least it happened to me and not my cousin and not this person, because imagine if they lost their mum, kind of thing. And thinking, I'm obviously the person that, whether you believe in God or whatever, that feels like this is my path. And in sharing this, I'm going to be able to share my truth and like live my truth and help other people. But gosh, like even speaking now, do you know what? Like, do you know the tears are like here?
Yeah.
And like in the neck. And then they're like, if I took a breath and sat down and thought about it, you would burst. And that's grief. It never goes away. And going back to your point, whether the person is no longer there in your life, you're still missing them. The loss is still the same. And I think acknowledging that every feeling of loss does not mean that the person's passed away. It's loss of a relationship, it's loss of having that person there. And in a way, and it might be strange to say this, I feel like the grief of still having someone in this world but not having a relationship with them and choosing not to have them around could actually be quite painful as well, like even a little bit more painful. And that's how I feel with my dad, because it's like, they're still here, but you've chosen to remove them out of your life. So you can grieve a relationship that's no longer there. You can grieve the fact that you don't have that person in your life anymore. But every feeling of grief is valid. There is no sort of like criteria. Do you cry in the morning? Do you do this? Do you do that?
There's so many different ways in which grief can manifest for us, and so many different ways in which we can get to that point where perhaps our parents are no longer in our lives. But they do provide you with that foundation, if you like. And as you say, there's nobody there to be mothering you, and I have that, but through my own choice. But I think it's quite a thing for women. We're not very good at talking and acknowledging our grief, because especially when we become mums, you kind of put your own emotions on the back burner so that you can remain strong. But I think speaking about it, we find strength in acknowledging the emotions that are usually perceived as weak. Because when I think of my kids, I don't want them to grow up thinking that they can't grieve openly or anything like that. I want them to feel the full spectrum of emotion and reach out for support if they need it. But how are they going to learn to do that if I don't show them that it's okay to be vulnerable, if I don't show them that it's okay to be sad and it's okay to say, I'm finding this really difficult? So yeah, I think that's really poignant. I think particularly when I saw your IGTV, it resonated with me for very different reasons to the way that it might have resonated with other people. But because I understood the way that you were talking and how you felt, and particularly on a day like Mother's Day, it compounds everything and it makes you really step up to that, because it's everywhere then, isn't it? It's in the supermarket, in the cards, in the big point of sales displays, and it's everywhere, and it really hits you in the face. And again, my father has passed away, and it's the same on Father's Day. It's there, it hits you in the face, and it's difficult.
Yeah, it's so difficult. And do you know what? I think that like where I sort of made that transition is almost thinking I may not have that, because you see certain mums are like 60 and 70 and I'm like, I might not see my mum at that, but I can be that mum, I can be that grandparent. So it's like, rather than thinking about all the things I'll no longer have or I've missed or she might not see, I'm thinking, well, I can be that grandparent. So it's almost like once you've moved through certain things, and on the whole side of toxic relationships, I see that as breaking generational cycles that are going to need you to keep moving forward to protect the future generations. Otherwise, it's going to keep repeating itself. And that's where we can't let the fact that society says that we feel judged because we've made a decision to remove a family member out of our lives, because there's a lot riding on it. It's not just you. Having those people around your children could then take them to those places of trauma that you went through. Yeah. So it's so important that you protect that side of things and say, do you know what? I've made a decision, not for me, but for my children, for the future. And they're not missing out on anything because they've got all the love they need. And I think that's something that worries us sometimes. It's like, oh, they haven't got this grandparent or got this and that. They'll be fine. And it's like, we are more than equipped to show them all the love and to be those people that we never had in certain parents, and just kind of move through those generational cycles and be like, you know what, I'm going to break through it, but I'm not just going to stand here and think about those cycles I've broken. I'm going to keep moving forward and bring us more like closer to a place where that trauma isn't the same that I went through. So this is a topic that I never thought we'd talk about, but I think with the whole removing a family member because it's something that you need to do, I think that needs to be discussed a lot more, because like there's so much around it that you just need to free yourself mentally sometimes to be able to be the best version of you. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in that place where you're constantly wondering that you're the problem, but you're not.
Oh, God, yes. It's not, I mean, it wasn't actually my intention to discuss it either. And it's something I haven't actually discussed. I've kept it very much for myself. And I think perhaps because I've not been ready to discuss it. And it is very stigmatized. It really is. I mean, I pick up a takeaway every week for the kids, and the person in the takeaway knows my mum and has asked me, how's your mum? And I've said, I don't know. I've not spoken to her for quite a time. I hope she's really well. And every week without fail, I will get, how's your mum? Have you made contact with her yet? And I'm like, no, thank you. I haven't. And every week I'll get the, oh, you know, you only get one mum. And I'm thinking, yeah, I do. And my relationship with mine hasn't been good. So I need to protect myself from that. And she needs to protect herself from that, because I think it was toxic both ways. And that's especially for me, to protect myself from that, having already had a fractious relationship with one parent. This is turning into a therapy session, Ola.
And I think this is when you get the best and most real conversations, because this is the stuff that we need to be talking about. I've never shared about my dad and stuff like this on social media, but it felt right to. And I think these sort of conversations free us mentally from that burden we carry a lot from not sharing. And almost like I said, that's the part sometimes I'm like, I wonder whether people wonder like who her dad is, like on social or whatever, or on Father's Day, why she only celebrates Darcy, or she never mentions why she only puts, and you know, you start thinking about that and you just like, you know what, it's not their business. But sometimes speaking about it really does help.
It does help. It's breaking that stigma surrounding it. And it's not anybody else's business, but breaking the stigma around it is important. And I think if we can feel comfortable in doing that, then that's a huge thing, because hopefully there'll be somebody listening to this that goes, you know what, I've cut off a toxic relationship and I too get you only get one, whatever. And it's heartbreaking all the time. I mean, it really stings, because you're actually really conscious of the fact that you only get one, and it's proper shit that you only get one and it hasn't worked out right. And I mean, for me in particular, we have an annex because we built the annex for my mum, and mum lived with us until not so long ago. So it's very fresh, and it's, you know, been a very quick process in saying, actually, this isn't working, let's move this way. And once that decision was made, that's when a lot of the toxicity came to the front. So I think people quite often forget that although you only get one, that one looks different for absolutely everybody.
100%. And this conversation we're having, I think, is going to help a lot more people than we think. And when we speak, I think it's not about us, it's about the other people that are wondering stuff but have never ever had the courage to speak about it and live with it day in, day out, and wondering, like, are they the bad person? For me, it's like, if someone's listening to this and wondering whether you're the bad person, like, you've made a decision to protect your peace and always be self-assured in that. Like, be really like, right, I'm doing this not out of selfishness but out of self-care, and the fact that I value myself and my being, and you value that person as well, because you can coexist. I saw something recently, you can forgive someone silently and move on with your life. Because do I see myself sat at a table at Christmas ever with my dad? I don't think so, because the things that have been done, the questions that I could have asked my mum and things like that, it's been done. So rather than thinking about, gosh, I'll never have this, I think, like, I'll see loads of Christmases with, like, the children around the table. So think about what's to come as opposed to what's been and what could have been. So yeah, I think that's...
Yeah, it is. It's what's to come. It's being secure in the knowledge that you've made the right decision for you and for your children and your family moving forward. And I love what you said, be self-assured in the fact that this is your self-care, to allow yourself to have that peace from that toxic person, whatever relationship that might be. And I think self-care, particularly across Instagram and that kind of thing, is painted as the bubble bath and, you know, the... Isn't it? It's the bubble bath, and it's having the nice face mask. And actually, self-care can go an awful lot deeper than that, especially if you are experiencing trauma within relationships. Self-care in that instance is to be brave enough and to have the courage to go, you know what, this is really traumatic for me. This is really negative for me. Nothing good is coming from this for me or for you. I'm going to step back.
This conversation, like, about how fluffy self-care has become, it's become the buzzword, hasn't it? Well, a bit of self-care tonight, you've got a towel on, cucumber on your eyes and stuff.
Yeah.
We need to de-fluff it. We need to, like you said, the trauma often goes deeper than that, and self-care sometimes is that addressing those things that we buried so deeply, that we allow ourselves to think about how it's affected us and the things we need to do to get ourselves to that place where we're starting to heal. And that healing is not always physical. It's not always getting your nails painted, getting a pedicure and whatever. It's not facial, it's internal examination, isn't it?
It is, and it's working on yourself as a human being, and again, as a woman as well as a mum, because we lose that female identity, I think, sometimes when we become a mum, or maybe not female identity, but we lose our identity as women separate from our motherhood, and that's a huge part of us, and it always will be a huge part of us. And I think I remember doing some work with a brand, and they wanted us to talk about self-care, and I remember turning to my manager and being like, I don't really do self-care. Like, can you imagine if I'd been like, right, well, sit down, let's talk about trauma. It's not what they wanted. What they wanted was, you know, the facials and the cucumber on the eyes and the getting your nails done and things. And that's great. If that makes you feel good about yourself, then that absolutely is self-care. But it's a really tiny tip of the iceberg, small part that is very fluffy, when in reality, self-care can go a lot deeper, and it can hurt like hell at times. It was traumatic to say this is a toxic relationship and no more. Really traumatic. And I don't think I've processed that trauma yet. I am working through it, but it was not, when you think of self-care, you think of it making you feel good and nice about yourself. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it can be really hard, and it stings a bit whilst you are ripping off that plaster, but ultimately it's going to put you in a better place.
100%. And something you just said as well about how brands, like, obviously we're both content creators. I think a brand contacted me after I did the grief IGTV and was just like, can we do an ad with you about this and this and this and this? I think sometimes you realise that why you're actually on that platform is to actually stay closer to your truth as well. And sometimes the pushback has to be stronger and be like, you know what, that isn't what it means for me. I'm not going to get paid for sharing something that's really opposed to how I'm actually feeling as a person. And I think, like, once we all get a lot more confident in the space kind of thing. That's something I would always encourage content creators to do, because imagine how deeper you're pushing that knife, like having that conversation about self-care when you know that to you it's about addressing pain and trauma and things like that. So it's something that I've learned a lot recently once we've gone full time with it, that if it doesn't sit well with you, or it's exploiting something that would help more people not being an ad, then do it that way, as opposed to here's a paid partnership and stuff like that, because of course the authenticity, just because it's an ad, will always get questioned. So I'm trying to definitely see ways of having more real conversations and being more proactive with that, just not giving it all to brands really. Sometimes it can be awareness if it's a charity, if it's a mental health thing, but self-care or International Women's Day or Pride Month or Black History Month, there is so much jumping on the bandwagon that I think we should all benefit more from using our platforms to have real conversations that don't involve brands, that more just share like our real life experiences.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a certain confidence that comes with having made mistakes, perhaps, and learnt your way and felt your feet within content creation, where you feel empowered to turn around and go, that doesn't align with me. And I think as well, there's also a certain amount of privilege that comes with it, because I remember, you got to pay the bills sometimes. And I remember thinking, God, if I don't take that, what if nothing else comes up? And it's taking that plunge and going, but that doesn't align with me. And that's okay. And knowing that you can say that. I think a lot of content creators that I speak to are quite wary of saying no, because they're worried that that's going to mean that this PR agency or this brand will not work with them in the future, and that kind of thing, because I'm saying, no, that's not for me, or no, I think that's exploitative, or whatever. And no, you're not. You're sticking with your truth, and you're aligning yourself with things that align with you as a person, and people can feel that authenticity. And it's okay if you've made mistakes, but moving forwards, it's kind of making sure that brands are not exploiting you, your audience, and that they align with everything.
Oh my gosh, like this has been one of the most wholesome conversations, I think, in terms of like where we've come from, where we've kind of gone like full circle. Because I think motherhood is something that we both live publicly online, but equally there's that behind the scenes thing, that like the whole real life thing, and how living your truth is just like so important. But equally as well as content creators, like the responsibility we have to ourselves, to our audience, and like how much like what we share should always stay true to you, really, kind of thing. So
we went a full circle. I love that. No, I really do. And thank you so much for talking to me and talking so openly and honestly, which I knew you would do, because you do it on your platforms, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's about being authentically you within motherhood, within womanhood, and with everything else, just living your truth and inviting other people to see it if it feels appropriate to you. So on that note, I did have one question for you actually that I haven't asked you. What is your favorite plantain recipe? Because you talk a lot about being a plantain loving family, and I love to try things with my kids, so I want to know favorite.
You have to try the plantain lasagna. You have to try it. Like, there is nobody that's tried it that hasn't been like, my husband was like, what is this? Like, it's that sweet and savory mix, but it's just so hearty, whether it's with a bit of like whatever potatoes or carbs you want to put on the side and stuff. Like, I'm a carb overload kind of person, and I have mayo on everything. But I didn't think I'd get a lot of people, and people would DM me, how can I have the recipe? So I only went and put a question box up and saying, drop your email in here if you want me to send you the recipe. Oh my gosh, I think I had over 600 emails. And Harry, if you know, do you know in those question box things, I can't even copy and paste. So I had to scroll through
and type them
like individually and send the rest of it. It was almost like that question you never wished you'd put up, like, I can't delete it, that kind of thing. But it made me happy to see that so many people love to kind of try it. I think the best way to kind of encourage that fusion of cultures and that appreciation of other cultures is through food, music, and fashion. Like those three things, like people have an appreciation of good clothes, of style, people have an appreciation, music that makes them feel good, And everybody loves good food. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't like good food, then like, I feel sorry for you. But like, I think that's where like people were like, what's the secret recipe for you guys? Like, you've only got 30K or however many followers we have now, and you guys get to do this full time. And I think it's because we've literally just harnessed all the things that make us feel good, and we share that, whether it's music, food, fashion, clothes, and African, whatever it was, like celebrating your culture and food. And then of course you throw in the other family, like the fact that this is a whole family life. So plantain lasagna, you have to try. But equally, I love to kind of, just like our lives has changed on social media, I just love anyone always thinking that, oh my gosh, can I do it? You don't need millions of followers to make a living that you're passionate about. If it can happen for us, it can happen for you if you're listening to this and you're a content creator, because half the times we limit ourselves and we kind of push the goalposts because you say, I need this, I need that, I need 500 likes. But you've probably been on campaigns with people who've had 5,000 followers, but their content is shit hot, great, amazing video, or they found their niche, whether it's stop motion, whether it's time-lapse videos, whether it's like their photoshopping skills, like Dad Download, like he's really good.
He's amazing. And he's lovely, isn't he? He's fab.
Exactly. So I think there are certain people that once you find your own niche, stick to it. But I think what happens on social media is we get pulled in different directions. You're like, oh, she's done that. Maybe I should try that now. And then you lose the fact that consistency is key. Like that whole saying that you have to write a book as if no one else is ever going to read it. But the key ingredient is the passion and the truth that you kind of put into it, because sooner or later someone will discover that book, and it only takes that one person. But if you never wrote that book because you're thinking there are so many other books out there, so many people have spoken about this, then you'll never ever know. And I think that's stopping a lot of people, because people are doing a lot of watching but they're not doing a lot of doing. And any way that I can share with people to be like, do you know what, just get consistent with it, stop looking at what we're doing, look, this is what you do really well. Or if you want to know how I did it, I used Splice, or I did this, or there's an app called this. You go away and you adapt it to yourself. You won't be the Pello fam, but you can be whatever you want to be, but take it and adapt it rather than trying to replicate something. Do it, mold it, and kind of use it for you. And I think social media can be a place of comparison because we're only human. And I'd be lying if I say you don't see something in your feed and you're like, oh, I wish I could do something like that. But it's how long we let that fester, and then we let that affect what we're currently working on, that's going to stop you kind of like putting yourself out there and just getting on with it. Because you probably know this platform can change your life, but you can also change other people's lives by kind of empowering them to feel the fact that like, we're not here trying to be like the ones held up on the pedestal. We're here for you to kind of be like, you know what, Black UK family doing their own thing, sharing their culture, being honest about issues about race, dancing on TikTok and showing messy rooms and their messy house and stuff. And if they can do it, we can do it too. When I see other people growing, I'm just like, yay, because that journey is so exciting. When you see the growth and you're like, oh, this is cool, like kind of thing, and you enjoy it, and you're like, I'm not doing this for the likes, I'm doing it for the people who are with us, who are our audience and stuff. I absolutely love being on social, and I think like there's so many people that have got me through like breastfeeding nights when your nipples have been sore and voice notes, things like that. I think there is a good side to it if we really, really look for it, but there is also the bad side that it can lead to comparison, but we really need to check ourselves. You need to be like, right, is that real life for me? If not, how can I cut my cloth, as my mum would say, according to my garment, kind of thing, that whole thing. But I love chats like this. I love it.
James, you're completely right. And comparison is the thief of our joy. And going back to what you said about loving seeing other people growing and seeing other people thriving. Somebody said to me really early on when I started this that there is enough internet for absolutely every single person to thrive and enjoy and to, find their own group of people that relate to them. And if that person you don't relate to, cool, that's fine. There's enough to go around for all of us, and for all of us to support each other and be happy for one another's successes. And I love that, and I feel that vibe from you. So where can people find you on social media?
We're all on Ola Pello, so it's OLA_Pello on TikTok, which I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do more of over the summer holidays, because Instagram has got so busy that we haven't had time to do TikTok. So you can find us at the Pello Fam on TikTok, but we're not as active on TikTok as we used to be. We spoke to our management team, we're like, we need a break. And like, I think we can't get shy about asking for that, because you can't just keep churning it out, because where your work mixes with social media, doesn't it get overwhelming sometimes when you just I need a minute, or today I just want to share a picture of a snail. I don't want to put an ad up. I just don't feel like. So we've got a 2-week break coming up, which I'm really looking forward to kind of having time to do some more organic content. But we're at Ola Pelo.
Amazing. Right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And there you go. People can find you there.
Thank you.
Thank you.